Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We hope you are keeping very safe and well. Thank you as always for joining us. If you're listening to the show for the very first time, and where have you been if you haven't yet listened to us? Of course, we're on Audio Boom, we're on Spotify, we are on Acast, we're across a range of different audio platforms. You can, of course, find us across a range of different social media platforms. We're on Twitter at Last Word on Spurs. We're on Facebook and Instagram too. And for better or for worse, we're also live on YouTube this season. We'll let you make your minds up if you think it's a good or a bad thing, depending on how this next 90 minutes potentially goes. And like I say, hopefully it's a better 90 minutes than what we saw yesterday. Delighted to have alongside me. He's our train conductor. He's the man trying to steer this ship in the right direction. I've got my main man, my co-host, the wonderful Lee McQueen's in the house. Lee, how are you?
Good, thanks, Rick. Hello, everybody, viewers. I have to say viewers now. I don't know, I'm still getting used to that. Viewers, listeners, everyone else. Hope everyone is safe and well. I don't know about a train, but it was an absolute car crash yesterday. Train crash to the biggest level. I'm sure, obviously, we're going to get into it. But I've also got some statistics that people will bemoan me for or love me for. But the Blue Book is back. And I've got some statistics that might be a little bit more comforting than that car crash that we watched yesterday.
Fingers crossed, Lee. I'm hoping fingers crossed. Now, as always this season, we're welcoming back returning guests to the Last Word on Spurs. First up, we've got the wonderful voiceover and impressionist Darren Altman is back on the Last Word on Spurs. Darren, you pick your shows, or I pick your shows for you. I'm so sorry to bring you back to this one. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm just glad that you deem me worthy of being a guest on your show. Thank you very much. I mean, I'll try not to swear. I won't. There'll be no C bombs. There certainly won't be an F bomb. There may be a W and a P, and we'll see how we go.
Darren, after the back of yesterday, I don't think I can tell you what to do, to be honest with you. It's going to be probably a tough show in store. Also pleased to welcome back to the show. We've got the brilliant George Sessions. Of course, George covers Crystal Palace. He also covered Spurs previously. And he's here to tell us all about what he thought yesterday. George, how are you? How's the family?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Shame I couldn't have picked a better result. But yeah, family's all good. And everything else except for Spurs, unfortunately. But that's the way it seems to go sometimes.
Always is, isn't it? Always is. There's a lot of people relying on some Lee McQueen positivity. God, we're going to need a lot of that in the next hour and a half to come.
I'll be honest with you, that's going to be hard work, Rick. I'll be honest with you tonight. That's going to be hard work.
It is indeed. It is indeed. Well, let's get into yesterday. I mean, for me personally, and I know it's hard because you want to try and provide, and the show we always try and provide a balance, but definitely for me, one of the most spineless performances I've seen from a Tottenham side in a very, very long time. 10 men, 11 men, it didn't really matter. Ending the game with our fifth and sixth choice centre-back pairing, everything that could have gone wrong, went wrong. Absolutely everything. Atrocious from minute one. Lee, we talk about crazy train, more like train wreck. I mean, what did you make of the game yesterday at Selhurst Park?
I agree. It was a nightmare. I've done a piece on social media the day before through the Blue Book. People always say it's a tough place to go, to Crystal Palace, and I thought the crowd. By the way, before we start the show, I have to say I thought they were outstanding yesterday. Crystal Palace, from start to finish, they were on the front foot. They had the crowd going. They were brilliant, really, really good football. Only we can only wish to be playing some of that sort of stuff at the beginning of this season. To be fair, so anything that we obviously talk about tonight is a Spurs show. So that's why we talk about from a Spurs perspective, of course, but fair play to Crystal Palace. The 12:30 kickoff, that was a worry. We said it in the WhatsApp group. Jamie from the Daily Hotspur said it right at the beginning. When before the match kicked off, was like, oh, that's a bit of a dodgy one. Straight after the international break, 12:30 at Selhurst Park. That's gonna be dodge. And it just felt like exactly that. I mean, the absolute, excuse my language here, I am going to have an S-bomb, the absolute shit show of Sanchez and Romero and Lo Celso. That is a serious issue that is kind of, I for one definitely didn't take it as serious as what actually it's going to be turning out. It's a problem for us, big problem. And then you add in the mix with Ndombele as well, that he can't play because he ain't been training, he wants to go, and this, that, and the other. Just in them four players that I've announced, that weren't going to be in the squad because they can't be, or and Ndombele was, but he weren't going to play. That's about £215 million worth of talent there. But by all accounts, you make your own minds up, and I've got some comments as well coming through. Talent, I don't know whether it is or whether it isn't, but certainly that's what we paid for them. 215 million quid. and they weren't there. Sessegnon not available again, another £30 million player we spent 30 million quid on. Then you add in Bergwijn, Son, massive blow, of course, getting injured and not being able to play. Bergwijn being injured as well, and he's been playing well, certainly in the setup that we'd had. That's a huge blow before we even kicked a ball. Then it was a 12:30 kickoff. Then it was Palace, and it was absolutely rocking. Unfortunately, I didn't go to the away game, but the fans that went, I'm sure one of our own, Chris Cowling, was there for sure, and Palace had it rocking, and we were woeful from start to finish. I've got the stats here. I don't even need to look them up. 2 attempts, right? 2 attempts. That's not on target. Just to underline it, that's 2 attempts at goal. That's like a pinger from 30 yards. We didn't have 3 of them. We only had 2 the whole match. Utterly woeful. So I know people want some positivity, and I will balance it, of course, later on, I'm sure. But you can't dress up, a haggard old dog. And that is exactly what we were yesterday. We were leggy. We were passive. We were beaten almost before we got off the bus. And I don't other than the things that we've talked about right at the beginning, or I've highlighted there, I don't know why. We were top of the league. Look, let's put it down to a real bad day at the office, and the Premier League Manager of the Month award, the curse strikes again. Let's put it down to that. Fingers crossed it is just that, and we can move on. But there's a worry. There's a friend of the show tweeted, Dan Yidvids, and he talked about statistics against us, and they do not look good at all. I think we were top for the amount of shots faced and all that sort of stuff. You've got them there, Rick?
I've got them here, yeah. I mean, shots we've had so far 38. That's the 18th in the Premier League in terms of that creation. Big chance created, just the 1. We're bottom of that list in the Premier League. Goals scored 3. Again, we're 16th in the league for that. Shots against 70. We're the first for that. So, I mean, it's hard because it is a new manager. I think, on the whole, you want to get behind him. You want to see what we're trying to do and give him time. But that is worrying yesterday. And I think the most worrying thing for me as a fan when I'm watching it is that if a game is going wrong and I can see it and we can see
I know what you're going to say.
And you're not going to see it being changed, that's massively concerning. Massively concerning. I mean, Darren will come over to you because it was a grim afternoon for Spurs. We are facing a centre-back crisis for Chelsea next weekend. But this was really the first, I would say, black mark against Nuno, who bizarrely made no progressive subs at all, even as the match was slipping away. I mean, what did you make of it, Darren, for you?
I mean, yeah, I thought the defence wasn't too bad. I thought, Emerson, give him his first game. Dyer has been playing great. Next to him, Tanganga, again, he can play it right back. He can play central defence fine. Reguilon fine. So as far as the actual back 4, I thought that's fine. Then you look at the 3 in front, and you've got Winks. Skip was I thought was a pleasant surprise. I just presumed that he'd be injured. So you've got him, Højbjerg, and Winks, and you sort of think, okay, well, why is Ndombele not there? Where's the creativity? Because I get. Listen, if you're playing, Man City away or Liverpool away, that is a tactic. You can do that. You can virtually shut up shop and put in 3 defensive midfielders and put your creativity, but not, with all due respect to Palace, and George knows all about Palace, with all due respect to them, not against Palace. You've got to have some sort of creative outlet, and there was none. And I mean, we'll get into it, I'm sure, later on, but there was just everything was side. And in front of them, Dele's got this new sort of defensive role now, where before he was playing in the pocket and threading balls, and he had obviously the lovely link up with Ericsson. He's sitting back now. You've got Moura that likes to, from deep, do his bombing runs. And I mean, I said it yesterday, but as much as I love Moura, and I think his talent and his feet, and he was the main creative outlet, he tends just to run into traffic. Like his end product for me, don't get me wrong, his feet are incredible. His runs, and he beats players for fun, it was unbelievable. But 9 times out of 10, he runs into traffic and will get a free kick. There's no outlet. And so you put all those things together and you just think, where was the creativity? And as the game progressed, like you said, there was Emerson Royal was on the right in space, flagging. and there were no balls going to him. You know, you look at Winks, or you look even Skip. You know, you think, come on,
They
we
were
can
both
see
doing
it.
it, weren't they, Dan? They were both doing it. Skip and Winks, they were both doing it. I mean, he was waving, Royal, wasn't he? He was waving, saying, hello, look at me. I'm a Brazilian right back, which means I'm going to be in the final third of the football pitch. And he just wasn't getting the ball. It was bizarre.
And like you say, Ricky, you know, you go a goal down and you go, okay, and you get a man sent off, but you go 2 goals down, and at some point, and this, as you've said, is the worrying thing. At some point, surely, whether you're Nuno or Jose or whoever, you've got to make a substitution to get at least get a goal back and try and get the draw, get a point, you know, because a point away is a good result.
Yeah, and that's the worrying thing for me. It's the alarming fact that, again, it's a game where we've been in the past under Pochettino, you signed under Mourinho, and now under Nuno, where as fans you can see when a game needs changing, and the fact that we didn't make that change is massively alarming, regardless of whether you like the man in charge or you don't like the man in charge. George, has come around to you because obviously your role is slightly different. I mean, you cover Palace for a living and you're a Spurs fan, so this obviously makes it very interesting. I mean, it was a real afternoon to forget. I mean, Spurs were robbed of all attacking threat in terms of everything going wrong, in terms of maybe the selection itself, but the sending off was definitely a turning point. I think we have to suggest and we have to say that Palace, they were deserving winners from the end of that game. I mean, what did you make of it as a whole, George, covering that one?
Yeah, I mean, Tottenham just showed Palace way too much respect, exactly like Darren said. I mean, Palace have got a decent squad this year, and I think they'll have a not bad season, but they're 4 games into a new manager with, 5 or 6 new players there. Why would you change a midfield 3 that was technically working in those first 3 games? Dele, we know Dele's got this new role, as Darren just mentioned. Why would you take Dele out of that new role? And, and again, add in Winks, who essentially is now not as good as Skip, it seems like. He's not progressed as we all expected over the last few years. So that was a negative move. Brian Gill, he looked decent in the Conference League game we saw before the international break. I would have played him. I kind of understand why Ndombele didn't play, given he's not sort of up to speed fitness wise. But yeah, the starting 11 wasn't that encouraging. The first half performance was definitely not encouraging, and then the lack of awareness in the fact that the game wasn't going as Spurs wanted it. I mean, I'll give Nuno a tiny bit of benefit of the doubt. He was going to make the 2 subs, wasn't he? I believe he was going to bring on Ndombele and Gill around 60th minute, and then Tanganga got sent off, which obviously massively changed things. But he still could have, as soon as Zaha scores the penalty, chuck someone on. And I guess we'll probably come on to Tanganga, but massively disappointed with that. A lack of, just naive, and he's not. He is a newish player, I guess. But then actually, he's been in our squad about 18 months now. He should be more intelligent enough in that situation to know he's just got a yellow card. Why slide into a tackle near the halfway line when you've just got a yellow card? He was obviously fired up from that Zaha incident, which he didn't really come across that well, I thought, to be honest. So I was hugely disappointed at that. And as you touched on a little bit earlier, it left us with a defensive crisis in that game, let alone facing Romelu Lukaku and Chelsea on Saturday. I was, I don't want to go in too hard on Jaffet because I believe he has got a decent future. He's a good young talent, but I was just so disappointed with that sort of 3 minutes from him in a time when he really, this almost could have been a really big moment for him if he'd done well against Palace and then done well against Chelsea. He could have made the centre back role his own, and now he's probably going to be back to 4th or 5th choice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to take a flavour of some of our listener questions. We have over 90 questions coming. So as always, thank you so much for your contribution. We try and read as many as we can out. I'm sorry if we don't include your questions. Keep on coming in and we'll try and read out as many as we can throughout the season. This is from Dan at THFC Fanboy. It says, is the free-flowing football officiating this season an issue? Lucas found many a time and nothing done. Zaha and Tanganga both should have gone after the incident. Nuno suspect tactically, but with a depleted squad was always hard. Kane isolated again. 4 games, 3 goals, not good enough. Z-Man says, line up on Nuno, but the result is on the red card. I know he's young, Jaffet. The lack of composure has finally caught up with him. Every match he seems that he's a little too aggressive. Got a pass against City, but won't be going forward this season. Still plenty of time to learn. Palace wanted it more. Jay Knight says, people are going to slag Nuno for his selection, but what it was down to was the players. No intensity, poor movement, and our talisman, not much more than a passenger. Can we just get rid of these international breaks? Simon Braddock says, for me, this is a massive negative mark against Nuno. I have no issues with losing a football match at all, but the manner of the defeat and the lack of trying to change it from the bench was, for me, inexcusable. Let's be honest, we've played well once this season, and that was against City. Mark Jarrett says, when the majority of the midfielders are defensive, we nearly always lose. Why do successive managers continue to make the same mistakes? And surely Ndombele would have made the difference. And BJ Handel says, having seen that first half performance, how has Nuno not acted and made the changes? Tactical naivety on his part. Now, I must say, I do want to have a chat on the manager. But again, it's as a show, we always try and be as fair balanced as we can. And we are 4 games into a Premier League season. We won our first 3 without conceding the goal, of course. He has won the Manager of the Month. Then we have one dire performance with 5+ first-team injuries, 3 at centre-back, and a red card. Obviously, I'm keen for the show not to be a complete meltdown. But, I mean, let's come round to you, Lee, because I think with the manager, the jury's still very much firmly out. You know, it's 9 points out of a possible 12. But I think the case is, as you know, that what we've had to go through over the past 24, 36 months is there's 2 things. 1, it's the style. 2, it's the results. Now, we've seen that Spurs fans are willing, some of them, to sacrifice the style of play if we're going to get the results. But if we're not getting the results and we're not getting a style of play, then it is very hard, very, very hard indeed to be patient with this brand of football. So where are you at the moment in terms of Nuno so far? And do you think we are going to see a progressive brand and Nuno is going to learn from the mistakes that we have seen against Palace?
I don't know, Rick, to be honest. I don't know. Look, I'm definitely not losing my shit over this. You know, it was, if we're talking about the game in isolation, it was absolutely woeful. And we've talked about that. And, you know, if we're going to review the actual football match itself, it's very limited positivity out of it. I think that the lack of, there's so many comments coming in as well. So thanks ever so much, everybody, for listeners' questions, but also the comments right now is incredible. It's so difficult to read everything out. But I think that, you know, when you've had that run up to the game, the preparation in terms of the actual run up to the game, that's very, very difficult to manage, as we talked about at the top of the show. And I did mention at the top of the show that Palace were outstanding as well. I thought we were very, very passive, and I couldn't understand. George, you made the point as well. Like if it was working well in the previous games, why change it? You've got an attacking midfielder. You brought somebody in on the left wing, Brian Hill, to come in. Sonny, your left winger or your left forward, is injured, and so is Bergie. So why aren't you playing Hill? Right? You look at Emerson Royal. We didn't need any time to bed in, did he? He was played. So why is everyone sort of, Brian Hill's got to have time to bed in? No, he ain't. Just let him come and do his thing. I didn't get that. So that is on the manager for me. That is that selection piece. And when the selection came out, you could see the meltdown that was happening and the defensive midfielders and so on and so forth. And maybe Nuno's philosophy, I don't know this obviously, but maybe Nuno's philosophy is, look, if you're working hard in training and you're doing everything that I'm asking you to do in training, you get picked on merit on that particular occasion. That's maybe why he put Winks in and not on Ndombele. But anybody can see that football match was screaming out for creativity, absolutely screaming out for it. And regardless of whether Ndombele's trained or not, Ledley King never trained. He'd go up as a defensive coach on the bus with Harry Redknapp, and all of a sudden he's playing against Liverpool. So I think that there's sometimes you have to look at it and go, right, I'm here to win football matches and and manage a squad and get all that balancing, but I'm here to win football matches as well. So Ndombele, it was crying out for Ndombele. It was crying out for Lo Celso. It was crying out to have some defensive stability with Dyer and Sanchez. I mean, I know we haven't even mentioned Dyer, and that was a massive blow as well. To lose Dyer within what is it, 15 minutes of the football match as well. You think, blimey, we've already lost loads of people to injury, and their egos off as well. So it was just a mess from start to finish. Your original question, though, Rick, to me was, what's my take on Nuno as a whole? I think he's an arm around the player type manager. I think that he's going to get players wanting to play for the football club again. I think when Pochettino took over, he was one or maybe two, by his own admission. He thought if we lose against Villa, he's probably going to get sacked, and he'd only been in the job for 6 months. I was going to save this until the end of the show, but there's so many meltdowns going on in the comments and in the listeners and whatever. I'm going to change it up a bit. So since 14-15 season, we've only started the Premier League season with 9 points once out of the first 4 games. Once. Let me read them out to you. 14-15 season, 7 points after 4 games. 15-16 season, unbelievably, 3 points out of the first 4 games. Where did we finish in the 15-16 season? It was a title challenge against Leicester, but we only got 3 points out of the first 4 games. 16-17 season, arguably the best football we've played last season at White Hart Lane. 8 points out of the first 4 games. 17-18 season, that was 17-18. 17-18 season, 7 points. 18-19 season, 9 points out of the first 4 games. That's the only other time. The 19-20, 20-21, 5 points and 7 points respectively. So again, you've got to put stuff into perspective. I think if we'd have got beaten 3-0 by Manchester City on the first game of the season and then subsequently won off our next 3 games, it would have been exactly the same points, and maybe we would have been talking about it differently. But the manner in which we approached the game and played against Crystal Palace yesterday, that's the thing that's worrying me. The lack of tactical changes and the lack of progression, guys and girls and listeners and viewers. I mean, what was we watching yesterday? Two attempts on not even on goal, just 2 attempts. It's just not good.
What was strange, because you listen to the press conference afterwards, and Nuno said, he said, we lacked creativity, and I'm like, am I going fucking nuts here? You should have made a decision. Don't,
That's what the bench is there for, isn't it?
You know what?
Yeah.
We lacked creativity. Yes, we lacked creativity because there was no creative substitutions. I mean, it's insane.
Do you know what I am, Darren? For me,
a £15 million player on the bench there that could have created a little bit, but no, obviously he wasn't available. Apparently,
for me, where I am for me, Darren, is that I said this at the start of the season. I really, really want this to work. I really like Nuno. I think he's a really nice guy. But I'll be honest with you, yesterday has already given me massive alarm bells just because of the nature of the game we're watching and where it's going. You're thinking, as a fan, as I keep on saying, I can see a change. And, a very good friend of the show, and obviously he put out a great tweet this morning, Dan from Youth Vids. Those stats we were out earlier, shots 38, 18th in the league overall for those. Big chances, just the 1 created, that's 20th in the league. Goals overall, 3, that's 16th. And shots against 70, that's 1st. We do know that, 3 out of 4 wins is fine, but that's not a recipe for success. And, we say Nuno's got bigger problems to solve than just the table would suggest. As we said, the game was up for grabs at half time, and it is baffling that he didn't make those changes. Is there anything for you that gives you the confidence and optimism that Nuno will learn from that defeat and we will see Spurs progressively move forward?
I mean, you've got this phrase if you go on the forums and whatever, and as soon as someone is positive, they get branded as a happy clapper, and like it's a real sort of derogatory thing. Well, the risk of wishing to be a happy clapper, he says, looking at all the comments.
We've got loads of them already.
So the risk of being a happy clapper, whenever the shit hits the fan and you get a result like yesterday, And in certain, I'll sort of caveat this by saying I thought this when I saw Winks in the team sheet, because as I'm I like a glass half full. So when I saw Winks, I thought, okay, right, he hasn't had a good start. It's all sort of sideways, backwards with Winks. But I thought this is an opportunity for you to prove yourself, and I thought, let's really do this. Let's have a fantastic game and really put the cat amongst the pigeons. He didn't. I thought he was pretty ineffectual yesterday. And so in answer to your question, when the shit hits the fan like it did yesterday, I sort of, I think, well, he's got to go and learn. He's got to go and watch the replay and analyze it and work out what he's done wrong and work out why there was no creativity, why it was going side to side, why we were sitting back and not, why someone like Gill wasn't running in the spaces and creating opportunities, why Dele didn't do that. So in answer to your question, Rick, let's hope that it's a bad day at the office and he can really learn from it and just, certainly with Rennais, not sure, let's get a result against them and let's get some flair players back on Chelsea and really turn it around. So I'm a sort of glass half full. I'd like to think that we would learn and that Nuno would really learn from what happened yesterday, because you can't, if you play like that and try and think that you're going to sort of play like a Jose Mourinho side against Chelsea and hit him on the break and just sit back for 90 minutes, you'll get battered.
Yeah, it's hard because, as I said, I'm seeing comments here where I've said obviously Nuno's a nice man, and when I say that like that, I mean Mourinho. Listen, again, it's not about just being nice. Of course, they've got to have the results as well. They've got to, they've got to give you what you need. And as a club, we've got a stadium and a training ground that, for me, is top 4 material, but yet we're not top 4 on the pitch in terms of investment, in terms of where we're at. We'll just bring you in because we know that Nuno does like a small, tight-knit squad without too much rotation. And that's been obliterated for the moment, quite frankly. It's been obliterated. He's already used 20 players in the Premier League, just one less than the 21 he used his entirety of the 2019-20 season for Wolves. So there is big changes ahead for him. What do you make of it overall, George, for you? Do you see Nuno learning from yesterday, or is that a real big worry for you at this very early period, 4 games into a Premier League season?
As a Spurs fan, I'm very, very positive normally. And like Darren said, glass half full. Unfortunately, Nuno, for me, has to change as a manager if he's going to be a success at Spurs. And what I mean by that is style of football at Wolves got on results, especially the first 3 seasons, in fairness to him. Good results, but the style of football was not that good to watch. And he had good players at Wolves. So, he got 2 7th place finishes, which was a good achievement. But that was a good top 10 squad. So it wasn't far off what he should have been achieving. And the football was generally Mourinho-esque, solid defensively, hitting them on the counter-attack, take your chances because you've got decent players in attack. So he needs to change his football because Spurs fans don't want that anymore. We've just had 18 months of that with Mourinho. We don't want another 18 months with that. Harry Kane doesn't want another 18 months with that. And the other thing that he needs to change is how he views the media. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a journalist, but the media to Nuno, from what I've seen personally when I've been in his press conferences, when I speak to people that cover him at Wolves regularly, he sees the media as an inconvenience. And in 2021, as a football manager, the media has to be your way of talking to the fans. And I think actually Nuno is he does seem to have got Tottenham. His quote about "to dare is to do," that was really nice. That was a good start. And I think that was there's kind of positives there. But early on, I'm looking at the way he talks to the media, the answers he gives, and he's not engaged. And if he doesn't engage with the media, he's not going to be able to speak to the fans and get them on board in terms of what he's trying to do. So there's two big red flags for me that I thought way before he was even linked with Spurs. I thought this when he was going linked with Palace, to be honest. And I was thinking, it'll be interesting to see how he does at Palace because it's kind of a similar level to Wolves. I always thought whenever he got that chance at a big club, unless he changed those 2 things, he would struggle. I want to kind of give him the benefit of the doubt because there's a lot of issues. And if we're honest, this squad, we were a top 4 club for probably a decade, I would say. Going back to when Harry first got us in, I think we were top 4 like 6 out of 10 seasons. I don't think we're now a top 4 club, top 4 squad, I should say. As a club, we are with a stadium and a training ground, but our squad isn't world class anymore. So we have to give him these 2 years, I guess, to try and bring through young players, to try and bring a better style of football. But the trouble is, one of our very, very few world class players is Harry Kane, who didn't want to be here and is probably going to want to move again next summer. So how do we solve that situation where Nuno needs time and he needs to be able to get his ideas across? But in fairness, are we really going to do anything this season with a manager of Nuno's class? That's the trouble. So I'm concerned, really.
Yeah.
I think he might be looking for a January move, George, at this rate.
Yeah, on loan to Crystal Palace by the looks of it. No, I mean just to sort of finally, I think Nuno got a 2-year contract. I think I'm right.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
I'll be surprised if he's here any longer than 2 years. Unfortunately,
well, that's a big statement to make. Yeah, that early on, but I think it's just where we are as fans, right? Because under Mourinho, many of us, and again, there was fans that wanted to give Mourinho time. And listen, every fan, I've always said, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. That's what the show's about. It's about bringing people on that have their own view. That's why we do the show, because like I say, it's giving fans a voice. And again, there's nothing right, there's nothing wrong with that. There's some that would have kept Pochettino at the time. There's some that would have kept Mourinho at the time. There's some with Nuno that, still feel it will work. And listen, with any man in charge, I think as a fan, you want to be able to back that man. You want to have the confidence and hope that they're going to turn things around. They're going to, basically progress the club. That's the key.
It is. Again, we've played 4 games. We've won 3 of them. Now, you've got to put some sort of context around it to everyone as well. There's comments flying in all over the place, which is fantastic. But look, let's not judge let's not make it cloud our judgment. Sorry, the reality of the situation. I just read out the stats there for the last 7 seasons. This is only the 2nd time we've got 9 points from playing 4 games. Putting it into context, this is Poch title-winning sides. The last season at White Hart Lane. And we still had less points than what we did now. Now, we might go and get battered against Chelsea. We might get absolutely ruined against Arsenal. We might be in the bottom 3. We might well get relegated. But it's not as bad as it seems, and it's also not as good as it seems. It's always somewhere in between. So let's put a little bit of a context around where we are. The Nuno, the manager we're talking about at the moment, has walked into an absolute horror show of Sanchez, Romero, Lo Celso, Ndombele not wanting to play, them 3 players having this COVID situation with Argentina. It's a nightmare to manage. He's had to deal with Kane wanting to leave all summer. He's put a team together. Dyer's been good. He's not been brilliant. He's been good for the first 3 games. He's been injured in the first 15 minutes of the football match. He hasn't even played Roden, and he's had to come on to replace him, who, by the way, I thought done pretty well, considering the circumstances. This was a sticky plaster. And for everybody calling out kind of, we should have done this and we should have done that in the transfer window, we've got 13 players out of the squad in the transfer window. Son being injured is a massive blow, but no one was calling for a Son replacement. No one. Like in the transfer window, we weren't gutted when we didn't get a replacement for Son because he just signed us a 4-year contract. He gets injured. That's football. The creative midfielder is an absolute massive issue. But when you've got Lo Celso, who was bought for 45 million to play that role, and Ndombele, who's bought for 65 million to also play that role, both of them are not available because of their own problems. That's what he's had to deal with. So just to put it into some sort of context, do you get what I mean? So I think for me, the worrying piece is that he didn't change it, and that's the bit. That's the bit for me for Nuno, is that he didn't change it, and that's what's worrying. He sat back and played 3 defensive midfielders when he did have options. Even though I've just said that the options weren't available to him, they were. Let's be honest. He could have played Brian Hill and he could have played Ndombele, but he chose not to.
Yeah. For our listeners on audio, we are going to go for a very quick break. When we return, we'll be discussing the selection, player ratings really in general, and then looking ahead to Stade Rennais to come in the Europa Conference League. Try and calm yourselves down. It's exciting stuff here. For our viewing audience on YouTube, and thank you so much for everyone joining us live, and the comments are flying in. We're going to get straight into that right now. Darren, I'm going to come back round to you because I think it's fair to say when the team news broke for this one, like anything with Spurs, there's always a meltdown. But in particular, this one did cause a bit of a meltdown. We saw he had to make a number of changes, Nuno Espirito Santo, to his lineup after the international break wreaked havoc on his plans. Of course, Christian Romero, Giovanni Lo Celso, Davinson Sanchez now having to train out in Croatia before being able to return due to their commitments in red-listed South American countries. On top of that, Spurs had no Heung-min Son, Oliver Skip, Bergwijn, Ryan Sessegnon all picked up problems on international duty that needed to be assessed. Skip did recover in time to play. Sungi Ndombele was in a matchday squad for the first time this season. In defence, Joe Rodon was on the bench, and of course he was later called upon following the injury to Eric Dyer. Thoughts on the overall team? Of course, we saw Emerson Royal make his debut as well. Was that the team you were roughly expecting, Darren, or was you surprised by those 3 defensive midfielders I heard you refer to previously, how Spurs set up?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, where was the creativity? Like in days of old, you'd look to Dele to have that role where he's running and he's creating space, he's finding pockets. But like it seems to me, and I don't know whether this is something that Nuno has specifically told him, but like I say, he sits a bit deeper now. And so not only have you got the 3 defensive midfielders, as we've discussed, without Ndombele, you had no Hill, and Moura, Dele, and who else? Moura, Dele, and
Winksy.
Kane.
Sorry,
Kane.
so yeah, and Kane.
We're all trying to avoid
got,
Winks being in that lineup as well. We have to say Harry Winks.
Sorry, and you've got Kane sitting. You know, there was no he. You know, if he would have been an out and out striker, you know, on his own at the front, and people were pinging balls to him, and he was the target man, that would have been different. But you've got, so not only have you got the three defensive midfielders, you've got Moura, Dele, and Kane all sort of sitting fairly deep. So there was no, you were never going to get that creativity. You weren't, and there were no balls coming into the box. The stats bore that out. You know, I think 1 shot on target. There was some stupid stat, I'm sure people will post it in the chat, about Kane not having any touches in the box or something like that. I mean, you can't win games like that. The one shot we had, Moura's pot shot from, as Lee said, 30 yards, nestled wonderfully into the keeper's hands. You know, that was it. And you're not going to win games like that. You've in answer to your question, how did the team play? I mean, again, you've got to put it down to Nuno, because when you set up that defensively, and there's no target man up front, everything's deep, everything's side to side, as we've said. Emerson, who I thought he got found out by Zaha on the right wing defensively. I thought he pretty much had him in his pocket. But going forward, he wanted the ball. He was crying for the ball. He didn't get it. You know, Dele, you know, some last ditch tackles, but he's not running forward now. He's not creating the pockets we're used to seeing him playing. So it was so static, and the movement off the ball was just, it was so static, and that was the frustrating thing. And, you know, without wishing to repeat what we've already said, you know, it was crying out for an Ndombele or a Hill. When we saw Hill play his one game of the Europa Conference League, he was busying himself. He was there. He was finding pockets. He wanted to, but you know, he was on the move. He was creating space. It was crying out. And this is why
just that bit of flair.
This is why we're all shaking our heads and feeling so frustrated, because like I said, after a goal down, after 2 goals down, you just to get a goal to try and get the draw, you know, a point, and he didn't do it. So I think the blame in this case, it has to lie with Nuno. It really does. And let's just hope that he watches it back and he'll hold his hands up, because he should have held his hands up, I think, in the press conference, and he didn't really. He's I think you said it, Lee or Ricky. Sorry, it was George actually. He's very canny, isn't he? The way he bats things away. He doesn't sort of answer questions. He's very political in that respect, isn't he? He likes to deflect questions.
Yeah, I mean, we'll come around to you, George, interestingly, again, because when I was speaking to, again, Wolves supporters that you do when you kind of do these channels, and how they assess Nuno over the past kind of 18, 24 months, that was the kind of lineup that they would expect, really, from Nuno. Those kind of three defensive mids they're holding. And like you said there, you know, at Tottenham, he's going to have to change that. And, you know, this is the worrying trend that in the last 18 months at Wolves, this was becoming quite a prominent feature. As I asked you earlier, you know, in terms of the learning stage of it, do you think, you know, on reflection, you'll look at that and think that's got to change, isn't it? I mean, like you said earlier, he's going to have to change and evolve that for Spurs to progress, to get results, and to also appease the fans. Because I think there's one thing, like I say, when you're getting the results and it's maybe not the greatest style of football, but when you're not getting both, that's also a problem. And just on Japhet Tanganga, obviously, I've seen him up close as well. What did you make of the incident with Japhet? He just seemed to lose his head with Zaha, and it was just, you know, for me, that screamed everything about Tanganga, young kid, needing to learn. It just was so typical. He's not had that many games either consistently. We've seen Japhet have a massive issue where, due to injury, there hasn't been a regular run of games. There's no doubt it was a red card, I think, over the course of the 2 challenges. But that's where you do need, I think, the leaders in this squad, the likes of Lloris, the likes of Kane, to go up and put an arm around him and say, Japhet, cool your head, calm down. And no one seemed to do that. That was the biggest frustration for me, that we should have leaders on that pitch now. As I mentioned, even including Højbjerg, someone's got to go up to that kid before he gets sent off and say, Japhet, keep your head. And Zaha's going to do that as well. When he knows he's rattled you, he's going to keep going at you. And that was the biggest frustration for me, that at no point, not one Spurs player went over to Japhet and said, keep your head. Did that not surprise you at all?
It did. No, I don't think it did. I don't think that did surprise me, because without being sort of stereotypical about leaders and talking about Roy Keane and people like that, because that was, that's a past era. I don't think Spurs have enough real leaders. You mentioned our three, really, then Lloris, Kane, and Højbjerg. Maybe only Højbjerg is the only real one that you would have thought that would have put his arm around Jaffet and said, cool down. And yet Jaffet does this, doesn't he? He goes into those tackles every single game. We love it when he wins the ball, but right backs and defenders in general now don't really make tackles anymore. They just sort of stand their ground and then sort of pinch the ball away, or you wait for your player to sort of run into you. Just in terms of kind of, Nuno learning, the thing that concerns me is that Crystal Palace game not really the exact same as Wolves away, except for Wolves didn't take their chances. How many times did Wolves and Adama Traore in particular run through and have an opportunity? Lloris made some good saves in that game, and we obviously scored the penalty. We did have a couple of chances, and more chances than obviously we had at Palace. But I think that's why that is why I have my concerns with Nuno. And I understand we have 9 points, like Lee said, that is a bloody good start. But when you get a new manager, you get a dead cat bounce, they call it. And I think that's what we've probably seen with Darren and Sanchez. Darren and Sanchez, they're not going to be the centre-backs that are going to take Tottenham to the title. We all know that. But they've come in, Nuno's come in, you've got two players that didn't do that well under Mourinho, and they've now got a second chance, and they're going to be really on it. But at the end of the day, we're going to eventually see that they haven't got the quality to be top four centre-backs. So I think he does need to learn. The Ndombele situation, I think that could have been handled better by all parties, if I'm being honest, because Ndombele shouldn't be looking for a move once again. I feel like every transfer window he's looking for a move. And I know he's lost his two friends in Serge and Musa, but he shouldn't be looking for a move, bearing in mind, he had a pretty good season last season. I really liked Ryan Mason, but I didn't understand his treatment with him last season. And then also on Nuno's part, I think he should look at this squad and see, go through the list of this squad. How many world-class players are in this squad? Harry, Sonny, maybe Hugo. Aside from that, there isn't really world-class players. Romero potentially, Ndombele potentially. So don't isolate Ndombele. If he's pushing for a move, get him on side. I don't care what it takes. Ndombele is arguably the most talented player in our football club, really. If we're being honest, when he's on it. So I want Nuno to be putting his arm around him and to be making him get into that team. Because if you think a midfield three of Skip, Højbjerg and Ndombele, that excites me. I think Højbjerg in the Euro showed that he can be a little bit more forward-minded than he was last season. And I'm pretty happy with Skip in terms of a young player. And then you put someone like Ndombele in, and all of a sudden we do have someone that can pass the ball through to Sonny running in, or they can link with Kane who drops deep. So I want Ndombele I want him to find a way of getting this team, and I think that will help Nuno. That will help Spurs as a group. But just look at our squad, and I'll tell you what. I look at our squad and I look at Crystal Palace's squad, and Crystal Palace's signings this summer. Mark Guy, I would have loved him at Tottenham. He's going to be a brilliant player. I'm sure of that. He's wise above his years. England under 21 captain now, brilliant bringing the ball out from the back. Joachim Andersen, another we were linked with, obviously. Two centre backs there that I would have been very happy if we'd signed. I think of Eze as well. I wish Tottenham would have signed him 2 years ago when they had the chance. Zaha potentially. Zaha would get in our team, wouldn't he? Let's be honest. So actually, when you look at the two squads, Tottenham have got a better squad than Palace, I personally believe, but not by much. So I guess that as that probably shows why Nuno does need time, and he's going to need 2 seasons, I'd say. And Poch sort of spoke about it, didn't he, 4 years ago, about this painful rebuild. I think that's probably just started now, really, with Toby going, with Eric Lamela going, Serge, Musa, Jan and a few others, Christian. I think that's probably really started now. So this season, next season is going to be a real big transition, and hopefully Nuno will be the man that gets us playing the football we want to see. But like I say, he needs to change things, and a big thing he can change straight away is to get Ndombele in that team and to get him with a smile on his face again, because that will unlock a lot of, and it will solve a lot of Tottenham's problems, I think.
Yeah. Lee, let's come around to you. I just want to ask your opinion, Lee, on Japhet Tanganga, because, very talented player. I've got no doubt that he's got a big future ahead of him if, number one, he can keep fit, and number two, like we saw yesterday, if he can control his head. Because that, to me, when I've seen Japhet on interview, he has seemed such a calm, composed individual. That just seemed really out of character for him yesterday. It was just the Zaha incident rattled him. And I know many picked up on the fact that Zaha did lash out, and there was an argument there that maybe Zaha should have seen red. I think upon reflection, there's an argument for that. But I just think as a player in the Premier League and you're in that Spurs team, you've got to control yourself a lot more. And I don't think Jaff let himself down yesterday and let the team down, because ironically, as poor as he was, and I can't get away from how poor he was, I still felt a 0-0. We can win this game because we've got players on the pitch of quality to do that. And I know people are screaming and thinking, well, hold on a second, we wasn't showing any. I
don't think we're winning that game yesterday.
I just think, Lee,
we could have played that another 2 hours, mate, and we had 2 attempts. Not even on target, mate. 2 attempts.
I just think at 0-0, because I just think at 0-0, although Palace were dominating on possession and they were creating chances, a game can be won in a moment. And Spurs have got players that can score in a moment. So that's my argument there at 0-0. But when Japhet does what he does, my worry is, again, that the mentality of this team, and this is a great question we had in here. This is from, I'm going to try and find the question here just on Japhet, because it was a cracking question that came in. I will find the question, but it's more of a case of, that mentality from Tottenham where in the face of adversity, we lose our heads, as we've seen before with Tottenham. Sheffield United comes to mind, games where we have something go against us and we can't react. Do you put that down to yesterday, or was that Japhet, again, just for whatever reason there, just not controlling his temper?
I think it was maybe a rush. It was ironic, actually, because he made a really good move to come out with the ball just before he made that lunging challenge. And actually, he lost control of that ball. He done a really good move to get the ball out, and then he lost control. It just went away from him, and that's why he lunged in to make the challenge. It was always going to be a second yellow card because it was so quick after the first yellow with the incident you've just mentioned. But I mean, you've got to learn. You can't learn until you've done something. You realise that you can't do that. That's how you learn. That's getting better. And you can't have it both ways. You can't say, "Oh, let's bring these youngsters in, and let's bring them into the football team and get them developed and bed them in to become." Ledley King, one of the best defenders that we've had at the football club in the modern era. He made mistakes. Gary Mabbott, he made mistakes. People make mistakes. Virgil van Dijk made mistakes. Saw him the other day in playing for Holland, and he makes mistakes. So I think, yes, they didn't get sent off, certain mistakes. And yes, it was a rush of blood, but Japhet will have to learn from that. And hopefully he will. Only time will tell. I certainly wouldn't be dropping him for the next game and so on and so forth. I think you've got to put him back in there when his band's up. Well, when his band's up, obviously, now that he's I don't even know what
Thursday. I think he'll play Thursday, won't he? I would assume. He'll play, so that's a good chance for him.
Context around it all as well. The fella's he wants to play centre back, but he's been playing right back. He's had a good start to the season. I don't think anyone can deny that. But he's been playing as a right back. Circumstances changed because of the situation. We only talked about that so far. Only I brought it up with Sanchez and Romero not being available. He's had to go into as a centre back position, right? And he was expecting not to be playing as a centre back. And obviously he's now got a new guy that he's never played with before in his life. Emerson Royal's coming next to him as well. And then you've got one of the most not antagonising players, but he's a good player, Wilf Zaha, and he had him running. After 20 minutes, he knew he had him, and he had him on the back foot for the rest of the football match. And look, these things happen. So I don't want to go too hard on him. Like it was a mistake. Because obviously, there's no doubt about that. There was a mistake, and he needs to learn from it. But you can only learn from when you're making mistakes. If we're sitting here as Tottenham fans saying that all of our players, and certainly all of our young players, are not allowed to make mistakes, then I think we'll delude it.
And we'll never get better either. That's the hard thing.
Exactly. You've got to learn from your mistakes, right? We all do, don't we?
Yeah, they're only going to learn through experience.
I thought it was funny. I'm sorry to interrupt. On Match of the Day, when Jonathan Pearce said, he said, "Oh, that's a harsh challenge on Zaha by Tanganga," and I thought, harsh challenge? It's a fucking assault and battery. Like he went for his throat. That's not a challenge. He was nowhere near the ball. It was,
No.
you know,
That's
and he
the
could have
holiday,
got a second yellow for that, really, couldn't he? A yellow for the challenge, but a yellow for the sort of choke slam.
I was just so amazed that, you know, number one, he reacted like that, and number two, I said earlier, there's just not one Spurs player in sight going over to him to try and control his temper. That was the most frustrating thing for me. You know, we talk about Spurs, apparently they're learning, and this is the frustrating thing about learning, you know, having leaders around you. You know, Harry Kane, we'll come on to Kane. I was just so disappointed that no one up to Jaffet. But Darren, a nice easy player to talk about. Ben Davies. Now, for anyone that's listened to this show over the last 4 or 5 years, I mean, I've always nicknamed Davies either Gentle Ben or 5 or 6 out of 10.
He definitely was nowhere near a 6 out of 10 yesterday.
Well, and he definitely weren't gentle either yesterday. I mean, again, with Davies, for me, he's a player that I look at the same as Winks, where these players are, and I want to try and be as polite as possible, but they've overstayed their welcome at Tottenham. It's past the sell-by date for their own careers. They need to go out and play regular first-team football. And Davies for me there, I know people have said again with that decision, it's contentious, but for me, his arm's out. I don't see what's contentious about that.
I didn't see it contentious. You watch it back, his arm was like that, and you can't do it. You see so many players. I mean, it's so cut and dry, the law now, that if someone's in a box, they do that. You know, that's the default position now. Hands behind your back, and then you can't, you know, it'll smack you wherever. But it was like that, you know. That's a penalty all day long, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, I put him in the same mould as Winks, really. That I think they've had every opportunity to sort of try and prove themselves, and you know, he's a squad player at best. You know, it's you want to give our players the benefit of the doubt because they're wearing the Tottenham shirt, but you know, it comes to a point where you have to sort of say, well, how long does this go on for? Do you know what I mean? And I think he falls into that category. I think when you said 5 out of 10, Ben, you know, I think that's a fair assessment. It was a penalty all day long. I mean, you can't argue with it. You can't.
I don't think you can. No, I don't think you can. George, Palace going 2-0 up. Again, it just staggered me the amount of space. I know obviously we're down to 10 men at this point, but the amount of space Edouard had, so much space to turn in the box and score. And you know, at that point, they're 2-0 and then even 3-0. It just, I mean, head's gone. I think that's the only way you could put it. The heads are gone. And that was such a difficult thing, really, where you just want to see some fight, some belief that we're going to get back into that game. It just wasn't there, George, was it?
Yeah, and you mentioned the leaders. You know, that's where you need the leaders, don't you? Really. You know, 1-0 down, and then obviously they get the second. That's where you need your people, the senior characters, just to sort of come in and say, right, let's get through this game, damage limitation. And yeah, that was massively disappointing. And I guess, you know, really, unfortunately, that centre-back pairing of Davies and Rodon's going to be the ones against Romelu Lukaku in a week's time, which is pretty scary. And I think that Chelsea game could be a real. I think this Palace game was a reality check. I think the Chelsea game's probably going to be an even bigger reality check, if I'm honest, because those top 4 clubs have just moved way ahead of us, haven't they, over the last sort of 12 months, probably 24 months, really. And that's why, although I'm not Nuno out, I'm not Nuno in. You know, I'm not that convinced by Nuno. I do also understand that we're just not in the same, you know, stratosphere as City, United, Liverpool, and Chelsea anymore. So we do need a bit of realism, really. And yeah, I'm not looking forward to that Chelsea game, but you never know. Hopefully, we can produce the sort of performances that sometimes we have produced when our back's against the wall. Because at times we have done it. You know, we all know
City,
what happened in Ajax, and the City game was a real good one. It reminded me of Mourinho's win against City, which was sort of his high point, and then it fucking went off a cliff after that, didn't it?
Yeah.
But,
we hope it's not going to go that quickly. We hope it's not going to go that quick.
Hopefully not. Bloody hell. Then it will be a relegation battle. But no, I think hopefully this squad can rally together. And yeah, you know, Lee's right. We haven't really mentioned the whole issues with the South Americans, and that's been a shocker. You know, from our government's point of view, from the Argentinian and the Colombians' point of view, just bloody playing amber or green list countries. Don't play your qualifiers in red list countries if the majority of your squad is bloody from England. So yeah, and even from, I guess, the players' point of view, I feel a little bit harsh criticising the players because they're playing for their country. And Romero and Lo Celso were sort of having the celebrating the Copa America on that week as well. But yeah, it's not great, was it, for them to all go? And yeah, it's just left us completely threadbare for a tricky 3-game period. Really, any 3-game week's tough.
Aren't they coming back on? Aren't they coming back on Saturday? I think they're coming back the day before, so they could all be in the. Theoretically, they could all be.
I think they're going to have to make a decision, Darren, because I mean, as things stand at the moment, Sanchez, Romero, and of course Lo Celso, they're going to be back a day before Chelsea.
Yeah.
So as difficult as it is for Tottenham, I think maybe on the bench, but you may argue, George, depending on what Spurs have as an option to them. If Dyer is actually injured for that game, there may be an argument you may have to play one of them, but we will see. But Lee, I want to ask you about Emerson Royal. It was a tricky debut, as George mentioned earlier, up against Zaha, but the Brazilian did show glimpses of what he'll bring to the table, albeit with very limited success going forward. He couldn't stop Edouard's late effort from getting past him, though. What did you make of him, though? He's had to come in pretty much straight away, Lee, to that starting lineup. Like you said, he has been thrown in. Is it promising what you've seen from him so far? Is it too early to make a judgment over the course of 90 minutes?
I think it was a very, very difficult debut. I think that, probably for the first 15, maybe 20 minutes, he done okay. I think you could see, like you just said there, glimpses of what he could potentially do going forward. I think he was brave. I think he was braver than some of the other players on the pitch for sure. But then Zaha got the better of him without a shadow of a doubt for probably 70, 75 minutes or so. And then obviously when we went down to 10 men, it became very, very difficult from that perspective for him. Huge. A huge learning curve really for him. Like he was playing for Barcelona 3 weeks ago, whatever it might have been, and thinking he's got his dream move. All of a sudden now he's getting turned a new one by Zaha when we're down to 10 men at Crystal Palace. Very, very difficult. So look, let's again, like I always say, it's the hope that keeps you, but it's also the hope that kills you. I'm hopeful that Nuno can get it right. I'm hopeful that we can put in some better performances. Again, for some of the comments that we've seen tonight, we did get battered against Wolves, but we got away with it. I don't think anyone's saying anything different. We definitely got battered against Crystal Palace, and we totally deserved the 3-0. My only saving grace, I suppose, from yesterday is that if he'd have brought Edouard on a little bit sooner, it might have been even worse, right? Because he looked class when he came on as well. But I think Emerson Royal, you can see that he's going to be going forward a little bit like Reguilon on the other side. I have to say, actually, I thought Reggie for I don't know, for the majority of the game, actually, from a defensive perspective, where we've probably criticised him before, certainly on the show, defensively, I thought he coped quite well. Again, when you're making all them different changes, we used to do the hokey cokey in our back line, didn't we, under Jose and Poch? Is it Danny Rose in, or is it Kyle Walker on the other side? Is it Trippier on the other side? Is it Sanchez? Is it Dyer? Is it Toby? Is it we've done a lot of that over the last kind of 2-3 seasons. And yesterday forced to do it, but actually doing it in match as well. You've got Tanganga coming in as a centre back, but he hasn't played there. Although this is probably his best position by his own admission, he hasn't played there this season. Dyer has lost his partner, who's kept 3 clean sheets with him all season because he's off in South America. Dyer then gets injured. Then you've got Rodon and Tanganga as your centre-backs with Emerson Royal, who's never played for the football club. I mean, again, just putting some context around it, it just feels like a bit of a mess. But ultimately, I think Royal, I think there's a player in there, definitely. And I think, it's one game. So it's a tricky start for him for sure.
Yeah, I actually want to pick up on the fact that Lee, you picked up there, come around you, Darren, Sergio Reguilon. I think he struggled to get forward in that first half, but combined nicely with Rodon's a block, a Benteke shot early in that second half period. But, Spurs, I think they need him to provide that outlet, right? That's what he's there for and in the team. I think we've got to take into consideration, but also he did make a terrific saving header off the line where if we did go on to win that game or get a point, he would have been revered for that. So it's a shame that isn't going to count for anything. But what did you make of Reguilon's contribution overall?
Yeah, I thought, again, defensively, I thought he was great. He was solid. But it's like we've been saying, that we're used to seeing him bomb down the wing, and be an outlet for us. And I don't know whether he was given a job to do and said, no, I don't want you to move that far forward. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just a load of old nonsense, but certainly he wasn't. We should have seen Emerson on the right, bombing forward, receiving the ball, crosses in the box. We should have seen the same with Reggie down the left wing, crossing the box. And this is what I wanted to say is that, everyone sort of, the label with Harry Kane, the world's best striker, and, certainly, in Europe. But fundamentally, if he's not getting the service from Reguilon, from whoever's on the right, from Emerson or Sonny, and this is another thing that we haven't really touched upon, the difference, with Sonny out the team and Kane not getting the service. Excuse my French, but we were fucked. Like there was just no crosses. There was nothing. Kane was sitting back, and this is the stuff that Nuno's got to look at, and hopefully he will look at before the Chelsea game and change it. And if we can get those players back in, touch wood if Sonny's back, touch wood if Stevie Bergwijn's back, it could be a different game against Chelsea. I mean, let's just put it in a bad day at the office, and let's hope he learns from it, because we're not used to seeing our wingers play so defensive and not bombing forward. You think of the days with Carl Walker and Danny Rose. I mean, defence used to shit themselves, absolutely shit themselves.
Glory days, that.
We don't have that anymore.
Yeah, and it's a shame because I think Spurs work best when they do have predominantly two bombing left wing backs and two right wing backs. I just wonder why. I mean, again, I wonder, George, part of it for me is that, when you've had a manager like Jose Mourinho, and again, I'm going to get lots of hate here from Mourinho fanboys, and I acknowledge that, I do think it takes a while for players to also understand another manager's methods. And whilst still for me under Nuno I've said there's a lot of work to be done, I do just wonder whether there are some traits still instilled in these players from Jose that's going to take some time to almost bring out of their system. And even with United, I think we saw United when Ollie first went there, there was a case where some of them were still so shackled from what they've been asked to do previously that the taking a new message does take a bit of time. There's that element to it. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. And also, of course, I've got to ask you about Harry Winks, a player that at the moment is Tottenham's scapegoat. I think it's fair to say now. You look at that squad, Harry Winks is getting a lot of that. I think for me, where I am with Winks is, and I said this during the transfer window, that I can't quite understand for Harry why he wouldn't want to go and play regular first-team football where he's clearly not Spurs' number one choice of midfielder. I think we've got at Tottenham a situation where it's very easy to stay at Spurs because they're in an attractive location. You're paid very, very well. You've got, let's say, London on your doorstep. I can understand that. But for a player, I think playing first-team football should be key. So does Winks have much of a future at Tottenham, in your opinion?
I mean, what you just said then, that's been arguably our biggest problem of the last 2 years is actually selling the players, that we wanted to sell, because there's so many that we wanted to sell. Danny Rose, didn't we, a couple of seasons ago? And you could go through a lot of players. Toby, we could have sold a couple of years ago before he signed his new deal. Might have got sort of 40, 50 million for him. Winks, he just hasn't kicked on. Him and Musa were actually, they were limited. But that season when we made the Champions League final, they were our centre midfield pair, really, weren't they, for the majority of the season? Musa Dembele was pretty crocked by then, unfortunately. Bless him, he was unbelievable when he was fit. But yeah, Harry Winks and Musa Sissoko, they were a big part of us getting to the Champions League final. And neither have kicked on from that moment. And in terms of Winks, he's seen Oliver Skipp now come in. And Oliver Skipp is basically the new Harry Winks, but we also hope that Oliver Skipp has more to his game, especially from a defensive point of view, that he will kick on. And I do think he's got a fantastic future. So yeah, I think Harry Winks probably should have left in this window. But then I guess if he's on good wages and clubs aren't willing to pay, I mean, how much would Harry Winks be worth? God, he's English, so that always adds more to the price. Tottenham probably wouldn't accept less than 20 million for him, maybe. That might be a bit too much, but just feel like given his experience and his English, they wouldn't accept less than that. So that's the sort of issue they have. And there's a few players like that. And I guess going back to your original point, in terms of the methods, Mourinho's methods, and sort of it takes time to get over them. The only thing is that Nuno's pretty similar to Mourinho, isn't he? Like, let's be honest.
Yeah, no, you be on. Yeah, I mean,
counter-attacking football.
Speaking to Wolves fans, there was that argument that Nuno is like Mourinho, but without the trophies. That's what they've said to us. Whether that's the case, obviously remains to be seen. I mean, we're hoping it's not the case because it's been a tough couple of seasons. Look, more than a tough couple of seasons, 20 seasons without, like I say, the trophies. So we're hoping it's going to be different. Lee, thoughts on Pierre-Emile Højbjerg? I think he needs to be better on the ball on the day. Struggle to do so with any real quality in that midfield. Again, is that down to the players that are around him? Do you think if you have an Ndombele or you have a Lo Celso next to him, that changes his impact on a game?
Maybe, but again, I think that's very, if buts and maybes again. I think the whole team from top to bottom was a 4 out of 10, and in some instances, 2s and 3s. I don't think anyone was over a 4 out of 10 in my opinion. It's just obviously my opinion. It'd be great to see what everyone else thinks in the chat. What is individual. I think Pierre-Emile Højbjerg has been fantastic for us, but he had a bad game yesterday, like the team did, and that's why I would have thought, like you saw him in the Denmark team in the Euros, he was becoming a little bit more progressive in the Denmark team. So when Nuno's picked 3 essentially defensive midfielders for that game yesterday, I'm thinking, well, okay, maybe he's going to push Højbjerg up a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Because actually he can put them passes through and whatever. But he didn't. Yeah. They just, I can't remember. The chat's going mad, so forgive me. But somebody just said, they were flat across the 3 were just flat, and they were. And there was, when exactly, Darren. And when Skippy got the ball, or when Winks got the ball, it was just backwards, sideways, and they wasn't looking at all. It was almost like they weren't getting a head up. But again, maybe that's credit to Crystal Palace. Maybe the way Palace were playing wasn't enabling us to, they had high energy, they were very well organised, they had a game plan to beat Tottenham Hotspur, and sometimes we were rubbish, do not get me wrong, but sometimes you've also got to credit the opposition as well. I think that I don't think yesterday was about singling out a person. I think from 1 to 11, we were woeful through the whole game, and that's why I'm hoping my hope comes back in to say bad day at the office, or ultimately, bad luck because somebody saw a magpie, or somebody didn't have a rabbit's foot, or whatever it is. You didn't wear your lucky pants. Whatever it might be, and we will go back to winning ways against Chelsea. But the stats are damning there. The points that we've made in the chats and the listeners' questions. Yeah, we have been getting away with it, right? And I'm happy to get away with it at 1-0 at Manchester City. And look, I think we played pretty well at the Lane against City. To be fair, we did get battered against Wolves. We got battered yesterday against Crystal Palace. And it is a worry, but I think singling out players is difficult because I think everybody from top to bottom need to draw a line under that and go again and rectify what was an awful result. Rectify it on the weekend.
Yeah, I do want to pick up, Darren, and ask you about Dele Alli because he is playing a new role this season, and it's one that does require him to be a lot more, more of an engine. And he was discussing it actually before the game to BT Sport, where he does feel like, now he's reliant upon the stamina. Dele on this show and across a lot of social media platforms. I mean, again, it's depends where you are with Dele Alli. I know Lee's always been a massive fan of him. He's always they will obviously suggest those stats from what he had in those first couple of seasons, which were incredible. We have seen a drop off the last couple. Will this new role work for Dele? I've seen so many people suggest that this formation isn't designed for a player like Dele. It's more designed for a player like Ndombele. Do you feel we will see a second coming of Dele this season?
I mean, if anyone follows him on social media, which I presume we all do, we can see the work rate that he's put in. He's bulked up. He's been really doing the gym hard and fitness wise. So I mean, listen, hats off to him. He's after the pep talk with Jose, he says I don't want to see Dele's brother, I want to see Dele Alli, and certainly in the off season, his fitness and his gym work has been unbelievable. But I think in answer to your question, Rick, it's the system, isn't it? I preferred the Dele when he was playing with Eriksen and they were interchanging and he was playing in the pocket and finding spaces like we saw Brian Hill do. Now, if fundamentally he can be the fittest, fastest, muscliest player, But if the system doesn't allow him to do what he wants to do, then you're potentially not going to see the best out of him. I mean, yes, he can, he can be more of a shithouse, and he can, whack players more. But is that what you want Dele to do? Do you want him to do that? Is that the Dele we want to see? It's not the Dele I want to see. What do you think?
I mean, George, let's throw it around to you. Where are you, Dele? I mean, the chat's going crazy about Dele. There's such a mixture of opinions, in terms of what he's been doing. And someone saying, why talk about Dele on every show? Well, if you listen to the show every week, you'll know that we always, give a player-by-player analysis. So that's the reason why we talk about Dele, because that's what we are as a show. We try and give, opinion on every player that we see play for Spurs. George, Dele, where are you on him? Do you think this season there will be a change, or are we going in the same way with Dele, where he's playing in a system that maybe isn't suited best for him?
No, I'm in Lee's camp. I'm a huge Dele fan. He's got for me, he's got everything to be a brilliant box-to-box midfielder. And in actual fact, that's really what he was at MK Dons. He then come to Spurs, and Poch obviously moved him into that sort of number 10 role, which was sort of like a new number 10 who sort of runs behind the lines. But actually, it was sort of first under Poch that he kind of dropped back. I can't think what season it was. Maybe our first season at Wembley, I think it might have been, when actually Spurs almost went to a 4-3-3 actually, where you had Eriksen and Son and Kane up front, and then Dele was kind of in that middle three. And I always thought he did that pretty well, because actually in terms of vision and passing between the lines, he's always had that. It's always been quite an underrated quality. And we saw that a lot with England actually at the World Cup 2018. So I think he can do this role, absolutely. And I think that was partly why I was frustrated yesterday when he's been playing well as a centre midfielder for the first 3 games of the season, combining nicely with Skip and Højbjerg. I just didn't see why you changed that. And that is where he is now in terms of his career. I think as a player, he is a box-to-box midfielder. I don't think he's going to really be that number 10, because arguably number 10s have really gone out of fashion, and people struggle to fit them in a team now. Basically, where defences are either really, really deep and they don't allow people space to run in behind, or actually they're so high that they're just constantly trying to catch you offside. So I think Dele's still got a massive future for us. And it seems like the whole Mourinho issue, and he was the Pogba really, wasn't he, under Mourinho? It was Ndombele initially, and then Dele was the outcast. I think that has really burned him. And I think probably missing the Euros, even though it was a year later, which technically should have helped him, that has really burned him as well. So I have confidence and belief that Dele will come good. And I feel like he has started the season well. So I think that position is there for him, box-to-box midfielder. And, he scored an absolute couple of blinding goals at Stamford Bridge, didn't he? Not that long ago. So let's hope he does that next week.
I do think that Dele knows. I think he's on last chance saloon at Tottenham. I think he knows that this is the season where he has to produce. And there's no disrespect to Dele, I do think for him, the only way he's down from Tottenham. And although Spurs aren't great at the moment, I think if Dele does not make it at Tottenham, he's only going to be going down to, no disrespect, the likes of an Everton, a Southampton, Newcastle maybe. I just think that's the hard thing, and Dele's got to just recognise that this is his last chance and give it absolutely everything. So we'll see. Lee, Lucas Moura, I think he's probably one of the very few players yesterday that actually, with the ball at his feet, looked like something actually might happen. And, it's hard to actually say that with Tottenham, because I don't think everyone yesterday was so poor, but he looked like, if there was going to be something to come from Tottenham, it was going to be through Lucas. But Darren said there earlier,
looked on it when he started. When the game started, I thought he looked on it. There was a moment, I think, in their final third, and he took the ball and he just mesmerised with his feet. I think, Darren, you mentioned it at the beginning of the show, and he took 2 or 3 players out with a couple of bangs on his feet, and off he went. And I thought, here we go. And I think we've seen that he's got the ability to do that. Like, everyone remembers what we did in the Champions League semi-final and what he did in particular. And by the way, weirdly enough, Dele got that assist for that winner, of course, didn't he? With a Danny Rose nutmeg. People forget that too. But look, the reality is that he has got the talent, a little bit like Dele, a little bit like Ndombele, a little bit like Lo Celso. But when are we going to see it consistently? This is the problem. This is the biggest problem. I don't think that he had a like I said, I've just labelled the whole team a 4 out of 10, and I still stand by that. I don't think that's acceptable. But in flashes, Lucas is there. The problem with Lucas is he doesn't get his head up enough, or he doesn't frighten people enough. That's the thing, because he can frighten people. You do that where he did it. He did that in our own half. He needs to be doing that in their final third, right? And if he's doing that in their final third, defenders start to panic, thinking that's a lunge, there's a penalty coming, or that's some, and it just doesn't happen enough. He doesn't get. I think he started the season pretty well for Lucas. If I'm honest, I thought it was a weird Nuno decision to drop him the other week when Kane came for the Watford game, when Kane came back into the side. But nonetheless, yesterday I thought he was on it, and then. The biggest thing for me yesterday was half-time. And you nailed it at the beginning of the show, to be fair, when and lots of the comments was as well, when Nuno didn't change it at half-time, even tactically, he didn't even have to change the person. Well, he did, in my opinion, but he didn't have to change the personnel. He just had to change it tactically, and he didn't. Yep. That was the problem. And, after the second half, there was just no player really... Rodon's getting some shouts on as well, and that's fair enough. I thought Rodon done all right as well, but overall we were 4 out of 10, and Lucas was part of that. I'm afraid he just didn't do enough. There was no. You mentioned earlier, Rick, that we got there's a moment in us where we can score a goal, but just didn't see that yesterday. Nothing from Kane, nothing from Lucas, nothing from Dele. There was no moments to be had yesterday. You didn't think there was nothing for you to think. Oh, here we go. Just nothing, and that's the problem. Lucas is in the team to do that. Dele's in the team in the position he was playing yesterday to do that. Correct me if I'm wrong here, please. Harry Kane is in the team to do that. This is a guy that won the most assists and golden boot last season. If something's not going right, you've got to take the game cliche by the scruff of the neck, and do something. And the players didn't do it, the manager didn't do it, and it was just flat. And that's what we got.
Yeah, I actually want to pick up there, Lee, on what you said about Harry Kane. We've got a question here, Darren, to come over to you. This is from, and I will find the person that asked this. This is from Simon Braddock at Tigers27, who says, whilst the result was awful, it was even more worrying to watch Kane give a half-hearted display like many of the others. In previous dismal performances, he's always tried to stand up. That didn't happen. I think he's had enough now, and it is a case of him waiting for a move. Now, I do want to say that yesterday, like we've all said, all the players were below par. But Harry Kane, as I mentioned earlier in the show, I was massively surprised that as the leader and as a vice-captain of this team, that he was not in Japhet Tanganga's ear telling him, stay calm, compose yourself. We want to see this game out.
Yeah.
Is that worrying you about Kane? It was, no touches in the box. So you can put it down to, of course, Nuno's tactics. You can put it down to the formation. You can put it down to the setup. But like Lee says there, when you are a leader, when you are a man that's there to, kind of help the team, and you are the poster boy of the club, for me, you've got to give more. You've got to grab that game, as Lee said, by the scruff of the neck and show fans you want to be here. And I'm just worried with Kane. I know we're only judging this on a 90-minute display where we haven't played well as a team. Have you got alarm bells with Kane at the moment?
I mean, to carry on Lee's 4 out of 10 analogy, I've listen, you can only take the game by the scruff of the neck if you get the service. And like we said before, he had nothing. He can't beat Crystal Palace on his own. Excuse me. I mean, there was nothing. There were no balls into the box. There were no clever passes. There were no running. He was sitting back. He wasn't the lone target man. I mean, yes, maybe the whole thing, pre-season with Man City has upset him, and he didn't want to make a statement. And his brother Charlie was ballsing everything up. But fundamentally, I just think that we were so flat, that we were so static. He didn't get the service. And all right, I do get the point. You're saying, maybe as our captain, he could take the ball by the horns and take the game from the scruff of the neck. But what's he going to do? Like, there was nothing. Like we said, there was nothing on the right. There was nothing on the left. And even if he's getting into positions, Dele wasn't playing his number 10 role, as George was saying earlier. So, I mean, I think that we were fucked from the start. And I don't know what more. I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate here, really, but I don't know what more Harry could have done. I mean, listen, I'm happy to be proved wrong, and I'm sure the guys in the chat will prove me wrong. But I don't know what Harry could have done to influence the game if fundamentally he's a striker that's not getting the service. And the other thing that we need to talk about is how important it is when Sonny isn't in that team, and that Harry can drop deep because Sonny's going to bomb forward, and then Sonny can drop deep because Harry's going to bop forward. There was none of that. There were no interchanging yesterday. It was so flat and so static, and I just think that like I said, I think we were fucked from the start with the tactics and the setup, and fundamentally, the lack of substitutions and changing. So, and I think in answer to your question, Rick, I don't think he can be held responsible. I think you're as good as the service you get, and if you're getting nothing, what can you do? He can't run around like a headless chicken, pretending to be busy when he's not getting the service.
Yeah,
I mean, I think Kane's amazing, but he's never really been a player to grab the game by the scruff of the neck. I don't think. I feel like someone like Sonny's more like that. I remember the game against Arsenal last season. He got the ball back 10 yards outside our box, ran the length of the pitch, curled the top corner. And also, when Kane's not with Sonny, we're a whole different team, aren't we? They're the two world-class players that we have in our side. And I don't think. I know that Kane had all this. It was a bit of a debacle in the summer, and I weren't happy with how he reacted in terms of not coming to training on the Monday, which we all know he should have been on training on the Monday. It took him until Friday to make the statement. We all know why, but you can't put that down to Kane not being, not having his heart in the club and all that. I mean, he scored 2 goals the other week, didn't he? And we're all thinking, happy days. And he'll score loads of goals this season. We know he will, but as Darren says, he needs the service, and when you haven't got Son there, then straight away, his chance of scoring a goal is limited. I'd love to look at I know you can't do it now, but I'd love to look at the stats from last season about how many goals he scored when Sonny wasn't in the team. I would imagine very, very few.
That's why I think it's even more baffling with Brian Hill not getting on the pitch, because you've got somebody who can run at people, dribble and be exciting on that left hand side. You've got Lucas on the right hand side that can do a similarly same thing. If he does it not in his own defensive area, but if he does it in their final third, you've then got Kane being able to do what he does in an England shirt, like we saw the other night. I mean, it was a tough game against Poland the other night. The England lads were playing the Polish lads in the European competition for our overseas viewers. And, he just scored a goal out of nothing, like literally out of nothing. It goes back to your point, Rick, that actually it can happen. And, but there was not even any trying. Like it wasn't he didn't even have a shot. Like, do you understand what I'm trying to say? That's why I'm so frustrated, is that's why it couldn't have come. So I just think the whole I've said it so many times and bored myself saying it. The whole thing from start to finish was a nightmare. Something wasn't right with the preparation, in my opinion, for a 12:30 kickoff away at Selhurst Park. Something wasn't right, and whether or not it's the lads that have gone away to play for their countries, whether or not it was just an international break, whether it was real deep problems that we've been talking about, only time will tell. Everybody, only time will tell. We will see, won't we? At the weekend, we will see again. Against Arsenal in a couple of weeks' time or whatever. But it was very, very difficult to watch, very difficult, and it's very difficult to review it without getting emotional, because we all want Tottenham to do well.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely a case of saying that, on this show, we try our best to provide a fair, balanced view as possible. We're not going to shout and scream. If anyone's listened to the show the last 5 or 6 years, it's not the way we are. We do try and provide more of an analytical view on it, for better, for worse. After the game, Nuno said that we had a lot of obstacles to overcome. I think we were in control of the game in the first half. I'm really concerned about those comments from Nuno. I wouldn't agree with that. Massively concerning comments from Nuno in terms of control of the first half. We didn't create much. We didn't allow too much either. We spoke at half time, and the perspective was to improve, but we didn't. He said on not bringing Ndombele or Gil on, they didn't come on because I didn't decide to bring them on. It was the right moment to make a sub, but then we went down to 10 men, so we need to balance the team. Asked about Son's potential injury, he said, I don't know, it doesn't look well. Stevie, let's wait and see, but hopefully they'll improve and be available for the game next week. And, again, with Nuno, I mean, I actually picked up George concerning comments there from his press conference, and we'll have to see in terms of what kind of team we see ahead of Thursday, where we're going to be going next. Before that, just do want to give a shout out to Joe Ronan, who came on for Eric Dyer. I think he did dealt very well in long periods of that game, Joe Ronan.
Yeah, maybe he was one of the players that was over a 4 out of 10. Maybe I think he did do pretty well, to be fair.
I think he did do well, Joe Ronan, on the whole. I mean, there was a case where it might have been a fault for one of the goals, but I think overall, if you're going to have to play him next week, I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world. I think the only thing that's let him down so far is a lack of games. Didn't play at all for Wales. Hasn't played really at all for Tottenham. So I'll be interested to see what Nuno does. But we are going to go for our final break of the show. When we return, we'll be bringing you a quick 5 on our opponents for the Europa Conference League tie against Stade Rennais. We're also going to hear from Anna from Spurs XY, who gives us her reaction to Spurs women doing exceptionally well. So for our listeners on audio, and we're going for a quick break, for our listeners on YouTube, stay where we are. We're going to get into that right now. Right, guys, it's Thursday night specials. We love these nights, don't we? Europa Conference League. Whether you're with them or you're against them, Spurs are playing. Now, of course, this is the first game of Spurs' group stage competition. We'll be travelling to the Razan Park to take on Rennes in Group G. Let's get into it. I mean, Lee, let's come to you first, because Rennes will be hoping for a better result after a 2-0 Liga losing effort. I mean, like I say, we're just going to hear there also from a preview there, an opposition view of what they're taking ahead of the game. But, for you, thoughts going into it, Lee, do you want to see a lot of changes? Do you want to see the likes of Ndombele, Hill being given opportunity here ahead of Chelsea at the weekend?
Yeah, definitely. I think, my view on this competition has been, if we're using it as a development, part of the development team and the development squad, then that's what we need to use it for. If it's a reintegration, if that's what you can call it, or get some fitness up for Ndombele, great. Then let's get him out there, a couple of senior players to get their fitness. After what we witnessed yesterday, there might be a few of the team that was in Crystal Palace to get some more playing time needed. Do you see what I mean? And that's the difficulty, and that's what Nuno's got to deal with, and that's his job, right? He's got to decide. The football club's got to decide where we want to go, what we're targeting this year. And if we're going to try and develop players, and when Scarlett going to get game time if you play Kane? I mean, you should not be playing Kane in this game. In my opinion, it's just my opinion, but Kane should not be playing in this football match. Joe Roden, I think that's a decent shout, but given the fact that we've got a situation with the centre backs going on, he probably doesn't play 3 games in a week, considering you've just read out some stats there that he hasn't even played for Wales, right? So, he probably misses out midweek now, based on the fact that he's probably going to have to play against Chelsea. So again, it's that balancing that squad and that fitness levels, or your green zones and your red zones and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I want to see some changes. I want to see some youngsters coming into the team as well, and to get some game time. These players need to get up to speed. And like I said before on previous shows, and I'll say it again, if and we don't know this, but if the club or Nuno's decide to use this competition for the development squad, then use it for the development squad. Don't start sticking in Kanes and Sons and Højbjergs because we're losing 1 or 2-0. You can't have it both ways. It's either development squad or it ain't. And that for me, if it isn't, then you've got to start to question where's Malaka Day. Sorry, I can't pronounce your name, buddy. Sorry. And the likes of Scarlett and these guys going to get some game time if they're not going to be used. It's because I think the first game against Paco de Ferrer actually showcased to everybody this competition isn't just a walkover. I think maybe some people said this in the comments about attitude and the players' attitude. We thought we could just roll Palace over maybe. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in this competition either. I think we got taught a lesson on that, didn't we, last season in the manner of the defeat going out of the Europa League. So, I think that if you're going to treat the competition with the respect that it deserves, you need to set out a stall and say that's what I'm going for, and you've got to be mentally switched on for it. And the players need to know, Rick, George, Darren, you're playing. This is your tournament. This is your time to shine. Or actually, you're sitting this one out, Harry, or you're sitting this one out, Tungai or Dele, because you're playing in the Premier League matches.
Yeah, I mean, let's come around to you, Darren, because we're going to try and squeeze this in over the next couple of minutes. What's your take on the actual competition itself? Do you want to see it being used as a development tool, or do you want to see Spurs actually approach it with a belief and instilment to win it?
I think I agree with Lee, to be honest. I think that you use this to blood the younger players, and at some point, you've got to give them a run around. Well, what's the point of them being on our books? I just looked at Rennes. They've drawn their last group match and won the 3 previous to that. So they're not going to be a walkover. But having said that, they are 11th in the French league. So I think that we, if we know that we're going to get Davinson Sanchez and Lo Celso and our players back, I don't see any problem with playing a Rodon or a Winks, and or a Scala or a Parrott, and give some of the younger guys. And like Lee said, it's too important, the Premier League now, and especially the next game with Chelsea. It's too important. We just we can't slump. We need to kick on in the Premiership. And I think that, I'm not naive enough to say, we're going to roll all these teams over. Of course not. But at some point, you've got to give the youngsters games, and you've got to say, listen. Otherwise, what's the point? What's the point in having the world's best training facility if you're not going to train these people and give them a shot on a say a big stage, but on a European stage? I'm with Lee, to be honest.
Yeah, I say Craig Bowell on the screen there says Rennes are producing quality players like Kambinga, Ousmane Dembele. There won't be any walkover. And I think, again, we've seen this with Tottenham before, George, that when we do go into these ties, like the Pajo de Ferreira, we do take it for granted. We do put out a weakened side and we actually get beat. So is it a case of finding a balance, or do you again view this as a development tool where players, like the case of Winks, like the case of Rodon, players in the squad, Scarlett, this is their opportunity to show what they can do with a view to them maybe breaking into the first team?
Yeah, I mean, Scarlett definitely is the youngster I want in. But I look at our squad, and our squad's big enough to put a good team out. And, let's be honest, we haven't won a trophy since 2008. I want us to win this trophy. Back in May, I was more than happy for us to miss out on this. I was thinking, finish 8th. Next season we'll have 1 game a week, and we can hopefully do a Leicester as a dreamer that I am. But now I'm in this competition. What were we? The first team to win the UEFA Cup, one of the first teams to win the Cup Winners' Cup. Let's go for this competition. This is the sort of competition that Nuno can use and build his legacy on. And also for Kane, I know that this isn't the Champions League and it isn't the UEFA Cup, but in 10, 15 years, this might be a competition that actually is viewed with a lot more seriousness than it is right now. And we have got a squad. Ryan Sessegnon was an unbelievable talent 3 years ago. Play him every single week in this competition, and hopefully he will start to develop and show the sort of player he is. But he should still be good enough at the same time to help us get through the group, and then let's take it seriously. I think someone like Winks, as you mentioned, Joe Rondon. God, I've been begging for the last 12 months for us to give this kid a run of games. He's played Liverpool and Chelsea, didn't he, last season? I think it was his first 2 games. Yeah, and then he plays about 60 minutes against the Crystal Palace team that are playing like Barcelona at the weekend. I just think he's shown for Wales enough times that he's got talent, and he's a wholehearted defender that loves to defend, which we have actually lacked for a good while. So yeah, maybe this competition can be the one for him that sort of sees him get a run of games. And yeah, I think our squad is big enough now. And Ndombele, this could be a chance for him to get fit and to then get into the Premier League team. But yeah, the group stage, you go with your sort of second choice. But let's take this competition seriously. Tell the players that we want to win this competition. Why not? What? Harry Kane hasn't won a trophy. All right, this isn't the Premier League.
I'm sure he's buzzing for this one. I'm sure he's trying to contain himself.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. If at the end of his career, the only trophies he's got on his CV is this, it won't be a joke though, will it? Because it'll be the only trophy he's won. You'd rather win this than nothing. So I want us to go for it.
Yeah. No. Okay. Fine. Let's get predictions to wrap this one up. Jules, let's stick with you. What are you going for?
2-1 win.
2-1 win. Okay.
Dane Scarlett's first goal.
Like it. Okay. We'll have to concede, wouldn't we? Let's go around to Darren next. Darren, what are you going for?
I'll say a win. I don't want to put a thing on it. I think we've got to win. We can't be beaten. I'll say a win. I won't put a score on it. A win.
Okay, a win. Okay, non-committal there from Darren. A win. not putting a score on this. A win. Lee, what are you going for?
I think 2-0 actually. I think we will. We'll score a couple, and I'm going with George as well. Hopefully, Scarlett is his first. And again, I just want to quickly say, right, this is a debate on the football match from what we saw yesterday, and ultimately, Nuno's performances. But we have had 4 games. This isn't an excuse. We were awful yesterday as a team from top to bottom, but we've also got 9 points on the board out of our first 4 matches. And that, like I said earlier, and I'm just echoing it again for people still tuning in or listening now, that's only ever happened once in the last 6-7 years. Okay, so we're in a situation where it didn't go well. We have to put it right. And what a brilliant game to go and do it. If you're scared, if you're frightened, if you think it's going to be 8-9-0 or whatever it might be against Chelsea, then, you know, maybe we shouldn't be supporting Tottenham. Because I don't think we've ever gone and beaten Chelsea 8-9-0 or whatever, or even lost 8-9-0 to Chelsea. Certainly not in my era. But the point I'm making is that the fact of the matter is that we've got to go and put it right. And it's up to the players, it's up to the manager to say, we made mistakes, we're going to go and put it right. And that's the only way that we're going to learn and we're going to get better. And as you know, as you just put up on there, Jordan just said that Rome wasn't built in a day. It's not an excuse, but if we continue to win 3 and lose 1, win 3 and lose 1, win 3 and lose 1, we'll be there or thereabouts towards the end of the season. So let's get behind the team, stop arguing amongst each other, get the behind the team, and hopefully we can do something this season.
Yeah. Now I wouldn't normally ask this, Darren, but we're in special company tonight. Is there any chance we can get a quick 30 seconds of Boris Johnson, and also along with him, could we get Donald Trump's views on Spurs at the moment?
Oh, you know, obviously I wasn't getting near the service yesterday, but I mean, at the end of the day, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day, and it's a project to build on. So at the end of the day, you know, come on, you Spurs. Order est facile. Today is indeed to do. So come on, you Spurs. Yes. Well, you know, as I say, you know, he's a wonderful ball, that fella, and you know, you gotta say that them Spurs players, you know, wonderful, you know, firm thighs, and you know, you have to say, you know, I'll see you on BT Sport, as I say, wonderful.
That's what that's good.
Tottenham Hotspur,
we could do with him, couldn't we? We could do with him.
Team. They call it soccer. Wonderful team. And that Chris Cowling, great guy. Lousy lover, great guy.
Darren, where can we find more of your content, please? Tell us where we can find more of Darren Altman.
So yeah, I'm on Twitter, Darren Altman. For some reason on Instagram, I'm Darren_Altman, but I put out a lot of nonsense. So yeah, thank you very much for having. And now we can observe the Rick Spur in his natural environment, ignoring all the trolls in the chat room. Yeah, that's what I do. Yeah.
Oh man, I completely agree. I will be ignoring all those trolls. My God, this show it takes a lot of strength. Anyone doing this podcast, my God, I tell you. My wonderful thanks to Darren Altman and also the wonderful George Sessions. George, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure having you on, George.
Thank you. I mean, it feels like it's been quite cathartic, actually. I started this pretty negative, and I feel a little bit more positive now. I think we're going to win a trophy this season. Let's go for it. Come on.
I just hope that the one we just were talking about, George, fingers, because it isn't. And the wonderful, our conductor, Lee McQueen. It's a train wreck, but Lee, it's up to us to pick that train up and put it back on the electric track, right?
Yeah, I think we broke down yesterday, didn't we? The train broke down at the station, run out of fuel, but maybe we can get some refueling in it, get back to winning ways in midweek, go into the Chelsea game with a bit of confidence, and we go from there. I think it's outstanding to have George and Darren on tonight. I've really thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been great to interact with the chat as well, even though there's been loads of trolls in there. You know, it is what it is, and the game is about opinions, right? And that's what it's all about for me. I love interacting with different people and different fans and getting everybody's different opinions. But let's put it into context, right? It's one game or it's 4 games. Let's keep going. Let's see where we are. We can't buy any more players until January, so there's no point whinging about any transfer windows because they're shut. So we are where we are. We've got what we've got. Let's see if we can get behind a team and go for it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think the case is, I mean, like you said there, Lee, you know, we'll try our best to say things as they are. When they're negative, we'll say negative. When they're positive, we'll say they're positive. But ultimately, you know, it is about, like I say, 4 games, keeping perspective. We are back, of course, on Thursday. What we let ourselves in for late night Thursdays with Europa Conference League nights. God, it's what this season was made for. It's what this season was made for. My thanks again to the wonderful George Sessions, Mr. Darren Altman, of course, go and check him out, and the brilliant Lee McQueen. And as always, guys, most importantly, keep safe, keep well, and as always,